Let's see. Let's call the meeting to order and let's start with the housing floor discussion questions. Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Courtney, before we start, I was gonna have Vicki share. So we've updated this room just a bit since the last time you were in here. So I asked Vicki just to share a couple of the new changes.
Yes, it seems like a long time ago. It was right before COVID, but there were some AV enhancements done to this room. One of the main things was we can now mute the microphone in here, which we could never do before. So when we're not having meetings in here, we mute the microphone so it doesn't record over other council meetings. The second thing, you probably won't notice it sitting in this room, but the viewers will, the screen will be going back and forth between showing the room and showing what's on the screen here, where before they could only see one or the other. And so now we can control toggling back and forth between what the live stream will show, whether it shows the whole room or whether it's showing the PowerPoint slide. And we also don't have to unplug a computer to do that. We can do it right here on the console. And then the last thing is probably we move the camera to this side of the room. It was over there previously, so now also the live streaming individuals that are watching that will be able to see everything that's going on in the room, including the screen and the people that are in the room. So we thought it was a much better fit to move the camera to that side of the room. So those are the three main things that we did to this room.
Cool. Does it show the whole room? Can they only see starting it?
If Brent wanted to pull it up, you could at cityofcarver.com.
That's okay. We could probably.
Okay.
It's
the whole room, and then that's in the distance. So right now you're seeing.
Okay. We positioned it and angled it the best.
You need to know which side to get. Okay, cool. Thank you.
I just went behind you.
Okay, Erin, have at it.
So I'm really excited that this meeting fell in this location because it feels like this is going to be a topic of discussion, less of a presentation tonight. Looking for some feedback from the five of you. So at the July 19th meeting, the CDA will be joining us, so members from the Carver Community Development Agency, CDA, the Carver County Community Development Agency. So Elise Durbin, Allison Strike, and a new member of their staff named Michelle will be with us to talk through some of the programs, some success stories that they have with other communities, and then we've also asked them to give an overview of what affordable housing, what life cycle housing is, just so we can all be playing from the same sheet of music, because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So having some specifics where we all can share a shared vision of what we're looking for. So in preparation for the July 19th work session, there were a couple questions in your packet that we're going to discuss tonight. The first was, what are your housing goals? I know this was a big topic at the strategic housing or the strategic planning session to try to make Carver accessible for everyone. So what are those goals? What do they look like for each of you individually? And we'll move on to what does affordable housing mean to you? So not looking for the super canned version of 30% of the area median income. What does that mean in practice to you? What does it look like here? And then finally, should we choose to move forward with some of these goals for affordable housing, what's your appetite to incentivize any programs? So the CDA is going to be a really good resource to give us some direction if we say we want to go all in, tell us every program that we could do, how we could get projects in the door. They have some really great examples of other Carver County cities and what they're doing on projects that meet some affordable goals with some incentivization. Is that a word? Incentives from the city. So we'll start with just the first one is, what are your housing goals? So I'll kick it to the group, ask that it is a discussion tonight since there's not a formal presentation from the CDA. But I suspect they will tune into this discussion, try to get some information to tailor their presentation a little bit on the 19th. So if you have big questions, tonight would be a great place to ask them. I likely don't know the answer, but we could prep at least for the 19th at this point.
Can I ask for a clarification on the question?
Yeah.
Are you looking for just looking at that type of housing, or are you looking for overall, like our overall feelings about housing?
Overall.
It doesn't just include the CDA type.
I think all of that is going to kind of mesh together.
Okay.
Like, what's your current state of affairs for housing in Carver, and then what are you looking for?
Okay.
All right, so why don't we hit just number one and hear
Please.
from all of us?
Yep.
All right, what are your housing goals, Lori?
That there's a variety. So that someone that's like, this is what I can afford. Oh, I can't live in Carver, they don't have that. So I hope that made sense. I'm seeing some head nods, but just, if it's possible, and that'll kind of come in the discussion too, just a variety.
So do you feel like there is a market missing right now?
So housing goals, I feel like housing is so much measured by the dollar amount, what somebody can afford for their what they can get approved and afford for their mortgage. So if it's just for that piece of it, just the variety, so that somebody who's, maybe wants to move back, or, this just, for the, all the good reasons, Carver's where they want to live, don't want the financial part that they are at personally to exclude them. So to be able to have that variety. So that's would be my housing goal. Christine?
So I'll piggyback off what Lori said for my first one, is that outside of either subsidized housing, which is one end of the market, and then it seems like most of the housing we have right now, I mean, we're talking $450,000 to $550,000 to move in. Those aren't, for many people, a starter home price. So I feel that we're lacking a middle ground for housing stock. So we have downtown, which you're going to find a lower market price, but also that's a stagnant number, right? That's never going to grow or change. So I think there's some opportunity that we should look into of possibly, and I don't know how this would happen, but smaller homes on these lots. Right now we have lots that are about a third of an acre, quarter to a third, and they are filled with the largest house that they can fit on that lot, is what it seems like. And we're looking at side lots that are 7.5 feet to whatever the next jump up is. And to me, that's really packing them in. What I hope we don't turn into is when I see some of these housing developments that, and some of them we have going in, but other communities as well, is when you start to pack them that close, and you have very few different types of homes in there, that sorry Shakopee, but I don't want it to look like the barracks of Shakopee with the townhome barracks, where everything, it's like miles and miles of just the exact same looking thing. I also think because of our topography here, we have an opportunity to create some more interesting developments without just clear cutting the land and making everything completely flat. I drive through Bloomington, which is an older community, but there's lots of hills and different things that they've just worked around rather than completely blazing through and flattening everything. There's also, when we're doing this, I know that Victoria had this for a while during the first kind of housing boom, that they would leave some of the lots in a development open for custom builders so that you can buy the lot yourself and choose the type of home that you would like to have on it. So that might give some opportunities too for people to have something that maybe fits their needs a little bit better. And then again, isn't such a cookie cutter. Let's see. And then when it comes to looking at the CDA and subsidized housing and low-income housing and things like that, where are we at in our numbers when it comes to, I guess, standards, guidelines? Are we above the capacity of units? Are we below it? Are we about average right now?
I'll follow up with you on the 19th. I could give you some general info, but I could hit you with actual numbers from the Met Council.
Okay. Well, those are my initial thoughts on that one.
Can I piggyback a little on that, and it'll be super quick. But, because I felt like I was really focused on like that dollar amount. But when I'm talking about like a variety of housing that I would see as a goal, is also like those that maybe want the maintenance free. And that's probably not gonna be your historic home. And then those that want that historic home, do those type of projects, as well as those people who want the large yards and do those projects. So variety, not just pricing, but also what that means for their, how they spend their time, whether it be maintenance free or that historical home, really large yard.
Maintenance free is an interesting word because every home.
There is
no such thing as a maintenance free home. Okay, I just want to be clear with that. Being in the industry, homeowners right now, they're confusing warranty with maintenance, and they think we're going to come by and touch up all the paint, do all the fix everything up that they've destroyed the first year. It doesn't work that way. But from back to the topic, when we're talking housing needs and goals, born in Carver, raised in Carver, move out of Carver, move back to Carver, retire in Carver, and die in Carver. That's been kind of the mantra for the last, 6, 8 years, which I still want to follow up on. We have some assisted living now, which is awesome, and we have some public with the CDA. But affordable housing right now is pretty much driven by land prices. I like the idea of developers leaving out some lots that can be purchased. That's an interesting concept. But the company that I work for, we have 17 different models. So if you can't choose one of 17 different models with umpteen different phases, you can make a development look differently just by that. But as far as our goals, the housing stock is important. I'm more interested in the affordable housing equation that the CDA uses and mortgage companies use, because they seem to be two different numbers. The price of land drives a lot of the housing that's out there. That's just the way it is. From the full cost of development and everything, and with the prices of materials now, it's insane. It's tough to build a house now under $350,000.
Can I ask you a question if you're in the building industry? So let's say you're doing a whole development, we'll just use the number 50 houses.
Okay.
So if the lot sizes stay the size they are right now,
but
and you build a smaller home on that,
okay.
So you're using less materials, less time, less labor because they're not as big. Are they still going to be making the same profit off of that? Because I think they say, the houses are selling. Well, that's all that there is. So, there isn't anything else. And I don't know how some of these people are.
In Carver, you get a lot of house for the money that you pay, more so than any other community.
True. But if you were to do that, let's say do that development, would you, just in your opinion, as someone who's in the industry, are they going to make the same amount of money by building the smaller 50 houses? Because they're not putting as much money into the labor and materials of it?
In order to develop a lot, you're going to have $100,000 into a lot. Mm-hmm. That's just the lot cost. That's sewer and water, everything to it. Basically $100,000. Now, if you want to price a house at $250,000, building a house for $150,000 when a sheet of plywood has gone up, well, a pallet of plywood costs about $18,000 more today than it did 6 months ago. That's just plywood. There's a lot of plywood in a house. A lot of plywood. So not only will they not make, their profit margins will be so pinched, I can't see anything between 250 to 3 1/4, even if the house sizes are, let's just say 2,000 square feet. That's a difficult number for any developer to make work. It just, especially with the cost of land the way it is. But the cost of land is the cost of the land.
Can we just, in the interest of time, can we kind of
Yes.
run back in a little?
I want to know from the CDA the number, the equation. I want to be able to say, okay, what is your true definition of affordable housing? Mm-hmm. Because everybody has different equations and everybody has a different answer to what an affordable house is. What's affordable some people isn't for others. I want to be able to be on the same sheet of music with them. That's my biggest concern. Okay?
Agreed.
Sure. So from a housing goals, I want us to, the higher priority to me is not single-family homes for purchase. It is other things. So it's rentals, it's apartments, it's townhomes, it's villas, it's condos, it's other things that I'd like to see more diversity of. I know in our comprehensive plan we have a lot of low-density residential areas, but we also have a fair amount of medium high density areas, and I would like us to start thinking about those areas. Also, I would like, though as a second priority, I do think it's worthwhile for us to take a look at our single family housing stock. I know we have a wide variety of age ranges of homes. I don't know if that gives us a range of pricing, right? Do we have that good range or do we not, right? And are there some ways that we can work with developers to identify some amount of lots that could be subsidized or incentivized in some way to make them less expensive? So that'd be a second priority. But also I want us to think about, you know, hopefully as 212 expands and we get more industrial commercial within our city, I would like people who work there to be able to live here. And I don't know that we have that price point or enough of that price point to really support hundreds and hundreds of workers within Carver. So those would be my goals.
I agreed with stuff that everybody said. I think for me, it's housing for all, cradle to grave. I don't want to see housing or living in Carver become unattainable because of a price point. That said, we had a conversation and you mentioned saying something like, do you need to buy your first home in Carver? And I don't necessarily think that we need to have $200,000 homes. I don't think that single family homes.
New construction.
New construction.
Yeah, I think that was the piece, like
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
should your first house have to be a new house, not
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
But I think, and you know, kind of to what you were saying, I think, you know, we do have some workforce housing, we do have some senior housing, but I don't think that 73 units at Carver Ridge is like X, that's crossed off of our list, we're done, we're good. Like,
Agreed.
we
Right.
need more of that. And I do, you know, kind of to the point that you were saying, Joy, the high density housing. I think we need more apartments and more, you know, the folks who work in Carver should be able to afford to live in Carver, even when we don't even have to look forward to our future industrial developments. Let's look at our city staff, you know? So making sure that we've got a good variety of houses. I don't think it's, you know, I keep going back to the slide that Erin shared during our strategic planning session where we talked about kind of what you were saying, Glenn, the price of land, and, you know, we can't get a house built for anything less than $350 or whatever the number was that you said, regardless of if it's the size of a postage stamp or 18 times that big. So I think for me, it's just that variety, and I don't feel like we have enough of kind of the perimeter size housing, if you will. You know, Carver Crossing does not, you know, whatever it is, 112 units, 90 units, can't remember how many units are out there, but
68.
sure, I was close.
What was the number?
68.
Right.
So I exaggerated a little. You know, that's not like, whew, we are done.
No.
We have got enough workforce housing in Carver. Like, we need more, and I think you've said it in the past, we also need more like really huge mansion type homes, you know, like both ends of the spectrum. Because we're getting plenty right now. We seem to be really, really good at bringing in those, you know, close to 400 and you know, $400,000 to maybe $600,000 homes in Carver. It's just kind of working on the fringes a little bit more. And like, you know, there's such thing as naturally occurring affordable housing for a reason. We won't necessarily be able to create a $200,000 option, or, you know, less than that necessarily, but making sure that it's just a little bit more variety. So I'm getting anything to add, or can we move on to what does affordable housing mean to you?
We can move on.
All right, you want to start?
Affordable housing. So, to me, that means it's a dollar amount. So it has to be related to income.
Okay.
I don't think it has to be mortgage. It could be rent. It's just what you spend on your housing compared to your income. I don't know what the right method is, but there should be a certain amount that you spend on housing out of your income and not more to be affordable.
Probably the same, like, also I would like to know on, like, and this came up earlier, and it sounds like you're gonna bring it up at our next meeting, on, you know, what does Met Council require? Like, what's the baseline? What's the bare minimum that we need to make sure that we are offering today, have in the short-term, long-term plans? So that we have that covered. It is more important to me than trying to identify affordable housing. It just feels like there's so many like outside variables. And I also I really feel like the city's priorities are more on providing the services, the infrastructure, the services, where if somewhere in the area we're really missing the mark on affordable housing, or if a nearby community is, if anyone is, I really look then to some other state agencies or government or county, like that's what CDA, or then we may not solve it, for everyone, but our first priority to me more, and that's kind of going a little bit into the next question, as far as appetite is, first comes, can we provide all the services? The water treatment, the, fire, police, that is higher than the affordable housing, only because I just have confidence in these outside agencies to help balance things, but more just to know, are we meeting the bare minimum? And then look at, is there somewhere where we should be making a strategic plan for? That's where I'm at.
Christine?
Okay, so affordable housing to me has a few definitions in my head, because there's the ones that are like the apartments that we have where are more subsidized and things like that, and then we have affordable housing, which was what I was just talking about, smaller homes, or possibly custom lots where people can choose their own home sizes. So Erin, from the planning world, when you say affordable housing, what do most people equate with that? I mean, is there a standard that people equate with that definition? Do they go right to subsidized housing?
No, and I think that's the hard part. In a planning world, when you draft this plan, it feels pretty mathematic, where it's a percentage. But that often doesn't equate to a community that has the stretch that you need. So we could say we have this many units that are at 80% of the area median income, but that's often hard for people to figure out what that actually means and who can actually afford those things. So yes, I could give you the pretty sterile definition of it, but I'm hoping through our conversation tonight and then with the CDA, we can take that and have it actually have meaning for all of us to be able to say, affordable housing to us is that there's a place for a new grad to have an apartment, where obviously they might be in their first job, where they're not making enough for a mortgage, but we could provide rent. So I would say through our conversation with the CDA, after that, the goal is to have a housing action plan specific to Carver that I'll be working on with the CDA. And I hope that at that point we all can collectively point to that plan and say, this is affordable housing to us.
Okay.
Because even thinking about Carver Crossing, the requirements of it, I don't think any of us could rattle off what it actually is and then think about the people in our life that would be living there. It just makes it feel kind of cold, where it's real people that we interact with all the time. But often the numbers make it just like, oh, it's that. So I hope that together we can draft a plan that we all can collectively say, yes, that's affordable housing. Hopefully it meets the requirements of things like the Met Council plan. But even if it doesn't, it can be a goal for us to work towards.
Okay. So then for affordable housing, and back that up and let's start again. I really think I liked I think it was the conversation you guys said you had, where it's maybe your first home in Carver after you left home in Carver. Doesn't need to be one that is a brand new house. And I'm sure that most people who come of that age range or demographic are not going to probably purchase one here. They're going to look for one that maybe is already established and by that, hopefully, if it goes up for sale. But I think there's something very sad about the fact that if you grow up here, you can't afford to come back and live here, even right after you get out of college, and that doesn't mean that you have a brand new home. So I've kind of liked what we've talked about that there's rental opportunities also. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be subsidized rental opportunities, but there's something where when you're getting started in your career that you can still live in
Can I just
Carver.
correct you really quick? I think the term that we've used is workforce housing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it
Sure.
may or may not be subsidized,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
mostly not.
Okay,
Right.
so we'll go with workforce then.
Thank you.
But some of it means the same thing and some of it doesn't. But yeah, but I think that it would be great to be able to have some of those opportunities that we were just talking about for people who are young in their career or maybe just are of a economic status that they just can't afford that big new house up there, so.
Or maybe don't want to mow the lawn.
Right,
Or
that
whatever,
too.
you know, like,
Right,
or like
right.
a pool or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, like.
But one thing about Carver Crossing, I know that they can't have pets there, unless they're, I believe it's unless they're service animals. I would like to, I mean, not that we can control what an owner does, but a lot of people have pets, and I feel like there's also a group of people who just can't live here because, well, I have a cat, now I can't, there's nowhere in Carver I can even rent to live, so I think that's too bad. I mean, that's a really minor detail there, but, if you have other,
We had more than
management
just
companies.
Carver Crossing, maybe there would be an option.
Right. I think
That's
you're
enough
a
said.
like-minded group of
Yeah.
loving
Yes.
so.
that's all I have on that.
Glenn?
I just want the definition from the county for affordable housing. Because to me, affordable housing, we can't agree right now, because everybody's got their own ideas and everybody has their own definition.
Yeah.
If the county has something that they kind of have as standardized, here's our formula, I want to know what that formula is.
And I will say, I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit. My goal of this question was to make it pretty apparent that we don't have a shared definition of affordable housing.
Sure.
To get the group to
We need
recognize
some
that it
help.
means
So,
different.
you got that, didn't you?
How many, I don't even have so Erin, how many agencies would come back to us with the definition? Not knowing, I don't wanna know what the definition is of the differences, but who do we lean on for that?
The CDA. They're very much experts in creating programs throughout the county for housing. So we could go out and say to 10 agencies, what do you believe affordable housing is? And I suspect they would come back with some similar information. But
Or
I
10
hope from,
different answers.
yeah, I hope from the CDA we can gather just some shared language about it, and then we can create our own definition. So yes, that'll have some parts of that equation for some of the nitty gritty, but I do think it needs to be a little bit more fluid and user friendly, just that we can all use it in a way that's approachable.
I think the only thing that I have to add is, when you said that this is to work towards having our housing plan, I think we do need to have that common definition where we're all like, yes, I can live with that as the city of Carver's definition of affordable housing. I think, for me, I tend to go more to that, you know, like, definition based off of the, what is it, the AMI?
Area median.
Yeah, the
income.
area median income. To say between 60 and 80%, this is
Yep.
what affordable is, this is what a rent price would be. But like the last two developers that we had come in with preliminary plats, I've asked them, what is the affordability concept of this? And they look at me like I'm speaking in a language that they don't understand and ask what affordable housing means. So I think if we can just say like, well, in Carver, it means X, Y, Z, and we've got our boilerplate language. That's what I want to
have
get
more
out of
questions
this.
about CDA. So is there any other like nonprofit agency in Carver County? Or it's pretty much them?
I would say not that does housing policy work the way that they do to create programs.
And if they, for some reason didn't exist, who would we go to? Like, would we go to like a Met Council or a state level or?
Not the Met Council. The Met Council has some programs that we participate in, but I would say the CDA is probably the best versed group in Carver County.
Okay.
Do you have apprehensions about the CDA?
No, I just don't know much about them, other than they're nonprofit. But I realize that nonprofit I think I put too much weight into that and
Sure.
not quite like understand their backing and.
And I would
Like-
say, I wouldn't call them a nonprofit. They
Okay.
have-
They're
That's
own
probably what I'm
agency.
doing wrong.
They're
then.
an arm of the
Yeah,
county,
so,
are they not?
yeah.
So they're funded by our county tax dollars.
Correct.
Okay.
So they don't
Okay,
work-
That's right, because I see them on the
Yeah.
property tax statement,
Right.
okay.
So they
okay,
don't
so
work
I'm missing
independently
that
as
link.
their own group. It's part of the
Okay.
county.
I don't-
It's a service that we pay into right now.
Yeah, the county board approves their budget, and then they
Okay,
appoint members to a board that serves them. So the county doesn't make decisions other than the overall budget for the CDA, but you'll find a similar group in almost every county in
Okay.
Minnesota. So yes, they're not a department of the county, but they're, I would say, have kind of an arm's length
okay.
relationship with them, that they're accountable in more ways than a traditional nonprofit.
And just
would be.
to like level it out a little bit, I would say it operates pretty similarly to a city where they have a board with a
Okay.
council with staff that bring projects to them and present and say, does this check our boxes, yes or no? So think of them like a quasi community that they operate off tax dollars. It's a staff similar to ours with a county board, with a board, sorry, not the county board, but a board
Okay,
of elected members to move through the process. So
Okay.
we can give you some good information. I'll ask them to do just an overview slide, just to say this is who we are, this is where
Yeah,
our
that
funding
would be
comes from.
helpful.
And
Okay.
not to toot any of their horns, but the staff that I've worked with have been fantastic and really knowledgeable.
Good.
So I'm excited for you all to spend a meeting with them.
Mhm.
But I would say they are very much the experts in this field.
okay. Okay, no, super helpful, so thank you for
Yeah.
letting me ask those questions.
One of the phenomena that's going on right now in the housing industry is something I've never seen before. But if somebody puts their home up for sale, and let's just say they tag it at 400,000, they'll take bids on the house. And right now, the latest I heard was $120,000 over asking price of the house. That's, to me, what's affordable. Okay, now it becomes a bidding war with people out there. I mean, they'll take 80 bids and they'll be all non-disclosed. They'll open up 3 days after they list the home and they'll take the highest bid.
That's
That-
almost a barrier to entry though, depending on the price point, you know.
And I think that's another good example. We obviously won't be able to solve a market crisis that's happening right now. But if there's a program that we could have with the CDA to say, this is our affordable lot, it's going to stay affordable because of X, Y, and Z policy, we could have those lots in town.
Okay.
All right, number 3, what is your appetite to incentivize affordable housing? Want to go first, Glenn?
We incentivized Carver Crossing. And it worked. And so I'm open to it.
Did we?
We applied for a grant,
Okay.
the Little Communities Grant from Met Council, and were awarded that. That's what we applied to the,
And the city was the applicant.
correct.
Okay. But it wasn't a,
We put budget
was it
towards it.
tipped? Didn't
It-
cost
Well,
taxpayers money
Correct.
from the city?
correct, like, you can do tax increment financing as another tool that's sometimes used, so,
Okay.
I think the scope of the
Plus-
question is designed to be like
Yeah.
tax subsidy. I think it, a grant is probably always has a priority over individual tax dollars, but just, we're just looking for like a general flavor of like,
Yes.
is it no out of hand, or is it something you'd consider based on the project?
Based on the project, I'd be willing to look at helping finance. If it's large enough in scope to where a developer's gonna have, let's just say they're gonna have hoops and circles if they need to make that project work. The CDA's latest. There's hoops and circles that they could not make work. I'd be looking at avenues to help.
Thank you. Christy, want to go?
I don't have a definitive answer on this one. I like some of the things that we have talked about that incentivize in a different way, and I like what Erin just said, you know, these lots are gonna stay affordable and this is what it's gonna be. So yes, I have an appetite. What that looks like until maybe we have a little bit more information about what we can do, I can't give you the right answer for that one, or an answer for that
I'm
one
not
right
ready
now.
to commit to $4 million right now.
I'm not, I just got.
Thank you.
And I anticipate the CDA will give us a range of options. So there are communities in Carver County, like Waconia, they're doing a project with the CDA, and they waived sewer and water connection, the city connection. So that's an option. It could be a land trust program, it could be TIF. So I think it will be worth another conversation afterwards to say, the CDA gave us these 10, we're interested in 1 and 6.
That would be, yes,
Yeah.
that would make it a lot easier for
Okay.
me to weed through, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, certainly we want to be supportive and we want to incentivize in any way we can. Does that mean that we give direct money out of our budget? Maybe not, but other ways that we can support, whether it's certain requirements by the city or waiving fees or helping with grants or whatever. I mean, you know, I know we're slated to get more money from American Rescue Plan and maybe other things that come down the road. I mean, we can look at those things and say, you know, how can we use these dollars in different ways? I'm open to that too.
Thank you, Lori.
Open to things like maybe waiving fees or a land trust, or if there's, I want to know more about the tip and more just like the history within Carver, like what other projects. So, and this might be for a future meeting, like what things have we approved of that for, and then what was the dollar amount that we, this might not be the best words, but like what did we give up? Because I feel like, looking out for the residents and the city, what did we lose or could we lose in tax? So like I know, I feel like Carver Ridge, and I feel like
Yep.
Fleet Farm, and I know Fleet Farm, that kind of is coming to an end.
Lakeview is a good one too.
Okay, Lakeview. So Carver Crossing was not?
No.
Am I correct? Okay, so I got the answer there.
Didn't we have one for Casey's too?
Yes.
Okay.
Or was
So,
the depot?
The depot, right.
so yeah, like just more knowing like how many options there are and absolutely anything for grant support. And only because I think we have some really good grant writers.
She's on fire.
And yeah, if it's, even a match that, that we do, knowing that, on, behalf of the residents in the city, like, that's money that they're giving up. But, so yeah, I guess I'm open to it. It'll be really helpful and probably interesting to know what other options are out there. And it sounds like we can learn from them what they've done for other communities too.
I'm struggling with the city incentivizing, and I think, kind of to what Christy said, I'd like to see what the options are. No issues with if we're able to secure another grant putting that towards a project, but I think saying that we're gonna budget X amount to incentivize affordable housing, I don't think that I am in favor with, but I would love to see what the options are. Kind of in my mind, that's more of a social responsibility arm of the builders and the developers and isn't necessarily the city's role. But again, I would love to see what our options
Yeah,
are.
and no offense to Glenn working in the industry, but I'm gonna say
None
most
taken.
builders and
Yeah.
developers do not have that arm.
Right.
I'm sorry, say that again, I didn't hear.
Builders and developers are for-profit companies.
yes.
They don't have a social responsibility
Right.
arm.
Yeah.
Unless we force them
Well,
to have a.
right.
Yes, 100%, and I get it, like, it's
Responsibility
a business and they're running a for-profit business. However, I'll push back that social responsibility is a thing in the world, and just as, we could volunteer to go to serve at a food shelf, there's a component and careers in that tract.
And there's market forces involved.
Yeah, it's not
Oh, I know.
a shot at you,
Oh, no.
but it just,
You mentioned
Yeah.
Carver Square, correct? About, as far as some of the incentives that we gave?
Carver Square,
No, we did Carver Ridge, Lakeview,
Fleet Farm.
Carver, and Fleet Farm.
What did we do? Did we do something with water for hookups in the square?
No.
the square.
Alright.
There was, there's maybe I think some oversizing costs attributed to that development that they got a credit for the Carver Dental.
Correct. That might be what I'm thinking. That
Alright.
might be
Can I
what-
just ask one follow-up
Yeah.
question to the council, because I think as I'm taking notes and thinking about this, is there a project or a development, whether it's in Carver or a city you've driven through or locally, that when you see it, you say, I like that to be in Carver. You know, obviously based on the discussion tonight, not just, you know, a certain like $300,000 to $400,000 development, but a project that you drive by and you look like, this is probably like quote unquote affordable. Is there an example that you could share with us that, you know, because if we know what that is, we might be able to kind of back that up and tell you the story of how they got there and some of the intricacies of it. And if you don't have anything now, but just curious if something comes to mind, like, yes, that's it. You know, like an example, like, do you like the Clover Ridge neighborhood in Chaska? You know, the garages are detached, alleys, etc. would be an example.
I used to live there, that was a neat, actually. I know,
What
you
was
just
that?
shook your
That
head
was
with
what?
alley. It was a neat neighborhood,
Oh, it's a
actually.
neat neighborhood.
Yeah, it was a neat neighborhood, and I mean, I have an alley now, but, so I don't mind alleys so much, but.
Attached garage is my favorite.
But it was, when they did build that, I thought, well, I mean, it's a different vision, right? And I thought, well, it's nice because it is something different, right? So.
I feel like Aaron's mentioned stuff, senior development something in St. Paul. It was in the paper, received coverage. I'd like to take that one as an homework assignment.
Sure.
Yeah, can we just
Yeah.
drive around now?
Yeah, I'll look for it now, but actually, just like 1 minute here. Different kind of park and rec's been on our mind, or my mind. And I was in St. James, and they have this like amazing park shelter pavilion.
Okay, I'm gonna reel us back in.
Yeah,
to
so,
talk about
like I said, 60
housing.
seconds, but that is one, so I'll get back to the Parks Committee.
How do I think it? Parts of around whatever, the new Lake Calhoun area where they have businesses on the lower levels and housing above. That's an interesting stop. I'd like to take a look at.
I also heard from someone they actually just sold their house and they've lived in Carver for about 15 years. And I said, well, why aren't you, because they're gonna build in Chaska now. And I said, well, why aren't you gonna, why don't you buy something here in Carver? And the response was, the housing stock doesn't fit our needs and they're able to afford one of the new houses up here. But what they were looking for is not a true ranch like we think of the 70s, but like the ranch that maybe has the walkout, but not the 2 stories.
Sure.
And they said there isn't that here in a new home that we can purchase. So they were looking to build so that they can have a more one-level living with, again, a finished basement with walkout, but not the 3 levels even. So
There's
just some
stock
there.
in Carver.
In brand new? Okay, well, I'm not buying houses for them. So
Yep, I get it.
that
No, I
was
get
just
it.
what they gave me, that they just weren't finding a lot in that style. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Good homework assignment. Thank you. Yeah.
Did you get everything you needed from us?
Yes.
Good, okay.
Looking forward to the conversation on the 19th.
Yeah.
Yes, likewise. Moving on, the pavement management plan.
Maybe has the walkout? Oh, there's that.
So that's the new.
Here in a new home. They're looking to.
Oh, it's fun.
We thought it was malfunctioning.
Yeah.
Vicki and I.
So, pavement management plan?
Yes, please.
So I appreciate the council's patience on this. We've been really spending quite a bit of time in our weekly meetings kind of going over kind of how to best present this to you. And if you think about the last time Aaron presented, we were looking at different streets and talking about different years. And one of the things that we realized after we kind of debriefed from that meeting is it was going to be a pretty tall task to kind of go street by street and build a plan without kind of honing in on what a budget would mean and then what that corresponding impact would be. So I'm just going to kind of give you a snapshot here, and then Aaron's kind of going to give the presentation. But essentially, we've built out 4 plans, and as with anything, we call it the investment scenario. You can modify any of these to 0 to, half of that 680. But I want to kind of give you an overview of that. The 680,000 is the full plan. So, and you could modify priorities within that, but that's essentially following what I would call best practices. I would say that with the caveat, and I've talked to, I think, a few of you about this, is we haven't had a pavement management plan throughout the history of Carver. And so I think there's a little bit of a argument to be made of a crawl, walk, run, that like for over 100 years, you know, the city's gotten by without doing that. You know, I think we're better off having a pavement management plan. I only say that to kind of note that going from where we're at current state to $680,000, and maybe you're all in line, but I just think that's a big gulp to say like, okay, we're gonna add close to $750,000 to the 2022 budget to get this going. So this is the context. You can see what each of them does to a $300,000 home based on what our current budget is. Kind of mill and overlay and lineal feet, what percent of that full plan, along with reclamation and whether a seal coat program is funded. So with that, I'm going to hit timeout on this and then kind of have Aaron share with you kind of the guts of that, and then we can go back to that slide and have a conversation.
I'm sure you.
Yeah.
You okay?
I was just gonna make a statement about 6th Street.
Go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, we've been doing a lot of work on this. We met in May, obviously, at the work session, kind of gave the base overview of, you know, the street ratings we did and the general approach to pavement management, you know, primary goals for taking care of your streets. Tonight, as Brent mentioned, we want to really dig into the financial impacts to the plan and really get a better feeling for what level of aggressiveness you want to put towards this plan going forward. After we have that, we'll spend some more time kind of refining the plan to show you what that would mean, what streets we would realistically be looking at taking care of here in the next 5 years. And then this fall, we'd be probably bringing the final plan back, you know, for adoption. So that's kind of where we're at in time on what we're trying to do tonight.
I just hit pause on that too quick, Aaron. And I think it goes without saying, but I think for maybe the folks that are watching, it might be important, is the pavement management plan would be just that. It doesn't mean that you can't change it, that when you get into a budget cycle and the pavement management plan says one thing, but man, if you do that, it's gonna really put the budget in a position that you're not comfortable with. This doesn't, by choosing one of these options tonight, it doesn't put you in a position where that can never change. We'll probably be looking at this every year, and there'll be flexibility within the confines of the budget process to say, we're gonna have to push a few things around to make this work, so.
It's not like we're going out and bonding for the whole thing right now. It's
Correct.
stuck
No.
into it. Okay.
That could be an option.
The next slide.
So just a reminder, we talked about this last time, but the primary goals. So number one, pavement management plan extends the life through pavements, right? So what that does by maintaining your streets, it effectively reduces your life cycle cost, you know, over time to maintain your street system. The second goal is to set some expectations for budgeting purposes. So you can have numbers in your CIP that you're working towards, right? Like Brent said, it doesn't have to be every year, this is the amount, but you've committed to saying, okay, I want to put, in general, X dollars to maintaining your streets, right? Third, this is one that I think about a lot, is grouping your projects to the extent that you can, versus jumping all around town and doing, you know, half a block here and then 2 blocks over there. Try to keep projects grouped up as much as you can. It's less impactful to the residents, and it's also a little bit more efficient. So, one big thing to keep in mind at the forefront tonight is reclamation projects. So when you have to grind up the whole pavement structure, like we had to do in Carver Bluffs last year, that's plus or minus about twice as expensive as doing a simple mill and overlay project. So just think about that, and that's why we're trying to plan ahead, is because if you let these streets go too long, then they turn into reclaims versus a mill and overlay. So, and that can happen pretty quickly. You know, over the course of even 1 or 2 years, you look at a street one year and you come back the next spring and it's like, oof, I don't think we can mill and overlay this anymore. We're gonna have to grind it up and start over. So just keep that in mind tonight. Seal coating, the goals for that is really simply to seal up the surface of your pavement. What that does is it reduces the amount of cracks that occur and how soon they occur. So it effectively extends the life of them before you need to do that bigger maintenance effort, such as your mill and overlay, your reclaims. New streets should be considered.
One question about seal coating.
Yeah.
Does that include the pea gravel on top?
Chip sealing? Yeah. So the chip sealing, you can. That's kind of the general standard practice, and why you do that is it allows traffic to go on it right away.
Got it.
So you don't have to do it. You can fog seal it, but you have to close the road.
Okay. Does that prolong even more than just your standard?
Fog seal?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I would say that chip seal does a little bit better job than just a fog seal because you do have that little bit of a layer.
Okay.
So that's my opinion on those.
Okay.
Thinking about seal coating, it's best to seal coat your streets within the first 3 years. That's a practice that's been standardized by a lot of counties now. And what that does is it seals up the surface before the sun starts to oxidize the top layer and exposing the aggregates and such. So that would be the best practice for seal coating. Okay, this is another one that I shared last time. This is really what we're trying to define tonight. We're trying to decide, do we decide between deferring maintenance for later, in which ultimately the life cycle cost is going to be higher, versus what that full plan optimized approach is, which is obviously going to be a lot more money up front, right? So what we need to think about and decide how we want to move forward is, what is that orange line going to look like to the city of Carver? How much money are you willing to contribute now to help you on the back end? So that's in graphical terms, this is what we're looking at tonight, is what is the shape of that orange line going to look like for us? Okay? All right, so as Brent mentioned, we have 4 options for our 5-year CIP that we just presented. We're presenting tonight just to get us thinking about things. So we have what we call the restraint option. What that does is it contributes an additional $40,000 on an annual basis. So as you see in 2020, we're at 120 in what was budgeted. So in 22, it would go up to 160. In 23, 200, so on and so forth, for a total 5-year CIP of $1.2 million. Now moderate, that adds $80,000 annually into the system. So that totals about $1,760,000 over the next 5 years. The aggressive approach adds $100,000, so going from 220 to 320 to 420, or about $2.1 million over 5 years. Now the fully funded was $3.4 million for some perspective.
For this, does 3.4 million get us everything that's done, and then we can say now it's time to start looking at some of the older, newish streets? Like I can't imagine that this ends and we're like, we have sole street maintenance after in 2027.
No, it isn't gonna end, obviously. So I think when I originally looked at it, I think if you got out like 7 or 8 years, it kind of got these older vintage streets in. But then if you look at some of the downtown streets, they're gonna start coming into the system. So it works out pretty good that it'll be more constant versus extremely cyclical, it seems like. But no, it'll keep going forever. So
I would view it as that 680 number is probably your plateau, and then there'll be probably fluctuations, because some of these projects, we've listed them out to be static or stable through that time span, but there will be fluctuations in certain years just because of the efficiency that you want to have in a certain neighborhood. You might have, in 2024, you might have $1.5 million worth of costs. And so you're always kind of building that, you're kind of trying to build that fund to handle those tough years.
Okay.
And then you'd make up ground in years where you don't have as big of projects.
Okay, thank you. I have, oh, sorry.
The way it grows exponentially, in the year 2028, if we go with, say, the aggressive $100,000 annually, is that gonna be 820,000?
We haven't planned out beyond that. And that was my request, because this thing just becomes untenable. I think the more years you add to it.
That's just it.
But I think if I could just finish this point, I believe the 680 is the plateau, but to look at our streets 5 or 6 years from now, I don't know what exactly the need is, and that's one of the things that's, when you look at our CIP, we're only trying to do 5 years at a time, where the previous plans, we were doing like 10 years. Well, to try to, if you think back to 2011, to try to plan for what it is today, I think it's a little bit of a fool's errand. I think you can get a general idea, but I don't think we're gonna be able to get to the finite point of like, we know we're gonna need this in a certain year beyond some of the bigger projects. Is that fair?
And just on the very first graph that we had, where it was talking about the impact on homes, we used 300,000 as kind of our baseline that we just talked about. Is that actually our median home price right now? Because I'm just thinking about all the new homes that we have up here who are much higher than $300,000 in value, are going to see it even higher than.
Correct, they'll see higher. The last time we checked, it was just a shade below 300, probably like 280. It usually takes the assessor's office a year or two to kind of catch up, so because the first year it's taxed at the previous year. So to your point though, there'll be definite like swings. If your home is valued at 150, it'd be half the amount. You know, if your home was valued at 600, it'd be double the amount. The other thing is that impact that we're showing in the memo, that's, to kind of use an analogy, that's in a vacuum, meaning like everything else around it isn't counted. So Jonathan Carver Parkway, any capital that you do, salary, insurance, etc. That's just if you added that to the budget. And so I think it really puts into perspective that, you know, kind of where you tell us to go here could have some relatively big impacts.
So I have a question for you, Erin. The one slide you had where a seal coat is recommended within the first 3 years. So if there's a new road today, then is that already part of the 2024, 25, like that's factored in? Or this is more of a get us caught up?
That's a really good point. We're gonna talk about that specifically,
Okay.
but no, it is not. So only the fully funded plan would have any sort of a seal coat program. We're just gonna be trying to do what we can for, you know, getting caught up with
Okay.
all overlays. So I'll talk about that a little
Okay.
bit more.
But just as a brief follow-up to that, because Joy and I talked about that this afternoon, you could say, as a council member, I want to do the moderate plan, plus I want to add the seal coat program, and whatever that number is. Let's say it's 40,000 more. So this is a little bit kind of buffet style. You can kind of pick and choose what you like.
Do you have a number for that?
Seal coating? So my stuff I did this spring, just to get caught up with
Just a
some of
dollar.
them,
Just
was
a
like
dollar amount.
was like 1 to 150. But we could say let's forget about those, you know, the ones that are all like 3 or 4 years old. We could just start fresh, so it would probably be a lot more manageable, like what Brent was saying.
150 a year.
I don't think we have we're
Yeah.
looking for like if you do a dollar amount every year, what that dollar amount would be.
Oh, I would say 40 is probably pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. This is one thing that Brent and I thought about, and how we could present this to get a feel for the sheer quantity of what the budget would go towards, how many streets you'd be able to get maintained with the amount of money, but not get too caught up on individual neighborhoods. So we thought about the Eagle Ridge development, which I show here. So that's like the Debbie Lane, Griffin Street, and the couple cul-de-sacs there. That's a decent sized neighborhood. It isn't too big, but I'm going to use this tonight as a reference for when we talk about how far we can extend our money. So it's about 3,600 feet of street, about 7/10 of a mile worth of pavement. About $225,000 mill and overlay, or $410,000 for a reclaim. Okay, so we're gonna think about this in terms of reference neighborhood tonight, so the Eagle Ridge is gonna be our reference. All right, this is a big table, but I'm gonna try to break it down. Basically what this shows again is our 4 options. So for example, restrained option, $1.2 million. We said, what would we do with that $1.2 million if that's what the budget was gonna be? And what we would do here is we would focus on mill and overlays would be the recommendation, because we can save streets by doing mill and overlays, right? So the reclaims they're gone. It's just a matter of time whenever we can work it in, but let's focus on the mill and overlays. We could get about 19,000 feet of mill and overlay done in 5 years with that $1.2 million. What that would equate to is about 5 of those Eagle Ridge size neighborhoods. That's pretty good, amount of streets that we'd be tackling. Now, the last column here is how does this relate to what I would consider that fully funded plan, in an ideal world, when budget isn't really an option or a consideration. Just to do things when they would come up, we'd be able to get about 90% of the streets that would need a mill and overlay, okay? Now the reclaims, on the other hand, this is showing we won't put any money towards reclaims. So 0 miles of reclaim or 0% of plan in that fully funded comparison. Now moderate, I'll just go through these pretty quickly, but so that 1.76 million, we'd get all of our mill and overlays, so about 6 of those size neighborhoods completed in the next 5 years, and we'd have money to do about 1 reclaim project for a neighborhood that size, which is nice because, as you know, Debbie Lane and Griffin Street itself it's getting there. It's going to need help here soon. So the aggressive, it provides even a little bit more flexibility. So same amount of mill and overlays, about 6 of those neighborhoods, but we'd be able to do about 2 reclaim projects in the next 5 years, which is about half of what the ideal fully funded plan is. And then lastly, the bottom row is simply just shows the fully funded plan, and the asterisk note on the bottom, that included a full seal coat program and that $3.4 million. Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay, I'll keep moving then here. So this is a kind of a summary for each option. I want to just point out the key points for each option. So option number 1 being restrained option, this shows no amount would go to seal coating, right? The risks there are obviously accelerated cracking, surface oxidation of your pavement, so you're going to need to do a mill and overlay sooner on your newer streets in the future. Now, mill and overlay, it doesn't quite get all the streets that we're going to need in the next 5 years, so some will fail and go to a recon scenario, but it gets most of them. And then, as I said before, we wouldn't be doing any reclamation projects. So pavement's already failed on those streets. You don't need to do them. It's more of what I'm calling a public perception of those failed streets. So do we want our residents to be driving on roads that have literally crumbling asphalt that Chad's guys might damage with the snow plow in the winter?
6th
So,
Street.
Let's give you the face one.
You almost picked
You almost
Christie.
slapped me in the face. I was right here. Let's see it.
so that's,
But I did.
yeah. That's literally the decision you have to make if you're going to go with a restrained option like this. Is you know that you're going to have to address that concern at some point. So, primary goal: achieve as many mill and overlays as we can with the money that we're going to have in front of us. Okay. Option 2, the moderate. Obviously, no seal coating again. We will get all the mill and overlays completed per that full plan is the expectation. And what's nice about this one, it provides a little bit more flexibility where we could do a reclaim project if we needed to you know, if that pavement is completely failed, it would give us a little bit of flexibility to knock out one of those projects if absolutely necessary. Now, aggressive is identical to the last one we looked at, but it provides even a little bit more flexibility to do potentially, you know, two reclaim projects coming up here in the next 5 years. And obviously, fully funded plan, as I alluded to, that would include a full seal coat program, and it would do your mill and overlays and reclaims as those projects are needed based on timing. It's obviously the best approach, and it's the smallest life cycle cost, but it comes with a much greater upfront cost. So.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
on all,
Yeah.
I guess all of these
Yep.
slides that we just looked at that go from the CIP budget? So maybe we want to flip back to moderate or aggressive, either one is fine. There we go.
Okay.
So we have 100% mill and overlay, 54% reclaim, and we have 0 in seal coat. Is there a reason that we didn't put a part of that percentage into seal coat and spread it across the 3, rather than have it just into 2 and leaving seal coat out in every one of these?
So the thought process was you'd put your money towards the mill and overlays, obviously number 1, just so you could save the streets, right? Because that's the most important goal. The seal coating it's a nice thing to do, and you will get extra years on the back end out of your pavements, but it's definitely not as important as getting the mill and overlays. You could, like, I'm just showing, I know that there's gonna be streets we're gonna have to reclaim, so I put the money into the reclaim bucket, but you could take some out and we could let the streets go. So this was just my recommendation for how you could allocate the money.
Okay, it was just something I was thinking about. You know, we know if, I'm using your example of, this is our example, streets, the circle of Debbie Lehman Griffin, saying, all right, well, what if one of these now gets moved and is actually a seal coat project, and we spread out those neighborhoods over the 3 rather than just putting them all in 2 buckets.
Yeah. Yeah. We can do that.
You know, then they may get pushed back a year or whatever it might be, but we'd be at least saving some of the newer ones as well.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. Any more questions? Okay, this is the last slide tonight. Just wanted to touch a little bit more on MSA streets. So this is obviously something that we're all looking forward to, hopefully having funding coming in next year for that. We think at this point, $250,000 is hopefully a goal that will be realized. We think that's very attainable at this point based on the miles of streets we have and everything like that. So that could be some pretty serious money. You know, if we do that for 5 years, you have $1.25 million. So that you think about as a bank account for your MSA streets, just like we're using the street funding for all of our local roads. So what we do is we bank those funds, as Brent said, and then we look at doing projects, you know, every 2 or 3 years probably. And for example, 4th Street is one of the streets that's probably going to be in our MSA system. We'd probably look to do a project on 4th Street sometime in the next 5 years. 6th Street, obviously we got the LRP funding for. That will be in our MSA system, but we're not using MSA funding for that because we have LRP, so.
And you did not include the state aid streets in
No,
the calculations.
that's a very, I should have mentioned that.
That's a good point. I assumed that.
This is all
Yeah,
of
so
our,
did I, but I just wanna.
this is all for
Yeah.
local roads, no
No
state
MSA
aid
streets.
routes,
Okay.
no.
Perfect.
So. Okay, yeah.
Can I take that back?
Yes, sir.
Just wanted, before I throw it back to you, Mary, I just wanted to make an additional point. So this is the summary slide here is gonna pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's noted in the memo, but the city has just over $280,000 in its street maintenance fund. So as you're thinking about options, and I think we've all heard tonight about the seal coat program. One of the things you could do is choose one of these investment scenarios and then say, well, we're gonna use that street maintenance fund as seed money to start the seal coat program in addition to, and then as we become more comfortable with the budget impact, then we can slowly integrate that number into the tax levy. But you know, if you think about a $40,000 annual cost, you know, you're looking at probably, you know, close to 7 years worth of seal coat funding that you could do on top of that if you wanted to use that. Now, another strategy, you could say, well, we're gonna hold that and we're gonna tackle Eagle Ridge because we know we can do it and we have the funding for it. Let's just knock that out and take it out of the plan. So there's some different scenarios you can choose from. So with that, I'll throw it back to the mayor and the council.
I just have one question off the bat. Knowing, you know, going with that Eagle Ridge example, knowing that we could probably pull the trigger on any size project at any time, would it be the most prudent to wait until we get roughly that $635 to $680 amount saved up before tackling a section, a neighborhood? Because
Obviously,
looking at
yeah.
this, it looks like we're gonna have to wait until 22, 23, right? Until we would have 280 plus 120 plus, you know, like it's gonna be a while.
Yeah, so, yeah, in a perfect world, it always makes sense to do bigger projects at once. It really comes down to, if we wait those extra 2 years, are the roads gonna be too far gone by that point where now we can't mill and overlay them, so.
And just a follow-up to that, like, the budget amount you choose will kind of dictate strategy. So let's just use the example that you use. That in turn might put Dan and Aaron and Chad on a different neighborhood because we have the money to do a smaller project. And then as you build budget, then you tackle the larger projects. So that's why we thought it was critical for the council to set a baseline for budget tolerance. And then we can build a plan, and then you'll still have an option to say, no, I'd rather have this ahead of this and that behind that. But this way, we can kind of give you some real world examples with budgets that are more or less in your tolerance area.
Okay, all right, thank you. Questions, thoughts, comments, indication of your budget tolerance?
I'm doing the moderate one to start off with. I'd like to get started on it.
Which one is that? I'm sorry, is that the 80?
The
Or 40?
Yep, the 42. I'm teetering between that and the aggressive. Can we look at the slide that says, where's that one? There it is. The CIP budget. So knowing that we have that 180, now that we just took that off in the fund already.
280.
280, sorry, even better. That we can put some of that towards the seal coating. I'm absolutely not looking at the fully funded plan right now. I think that's far too much to bite off on our first one. Not that I don't think that it's important, but I can't justify that kind of a tax dollar amount unless we were to make cuts somewhere else to add that in, but then something else has to go, so it isn't such a huge amount. So I'm, like I said, teetering between moderate and aggressive, knowing that we have that that other 280,000 in the account.
I'm personally on the aggressive. I'm not sure I can do the full 680 right now. It's a lot to add, especially with all the other things that we're at. But I also feel like we got to be a little bit aggressive now. We are in a peak growth period for Carver. We're going to have a lot more taxpayers over the next couple of years to spread this around onto. And I think we owe it to the constituents to be careful with future dollars, right? We don't have all these reclaims, right? Let's try to get this as aggressively funded as possible. And I do like the idea of using the 280 to help the seal coat, because I hear your message. It's preventative maintenance for sure and will help us. And that's also a good use of dollars.
Go ahead, Lori.
I lean towards moderate, but teeter a little bit on the aggressive. I don't have an appetite for the fully funded. I would like the idea of maybe the moderate with adding, you know, for sure in the budget, the seal coating. I just want to see us just be good stewards of any new road, to be able to say, this new road, yep, we have it in our budget. 3 years from now, we're doing our best to take care of it, so that we're not in this situation in years from now. So that's where I'm at, closer to moderate than aggressive, but definitely being a little more proactive on the seal coat.
I'm leaning towards the aggressive side. As I told Brent earlier, with the impact on a $300,000 home, being $321 per home, I was like, you're basically saying anybody who's bought a new house in Carver, the last 3 years, that you're gonna pay another $321 a year in taxes. No, I do not have an appetite for that. But I absolutely believe in the seal coat program as preventative maintenance. So I'm leaning towards the aggressive and using the 280 for seal coating programs.
I as well have zero appetite for the full. So I think that's the easiest to start out with.
Scratch.
But I do appreciate having seen it because
We know.
that's heartburn, knowing that what that actually costs and seeing that real money. So thank you guys for laying that out. I appreciate that. I like my comfort level is more of the aggressive plan. I wish we could call that something else. I'm seeing a Nick Mason headline. Using responsible. Yeah.
I can say that if once the council selects $100,000,
Yes.
we won't be adding the descriptive words.
Okay.
Because there'll only
Okay,
be
that's
one.
good. It just
Yeah.
Messaging. But I also would dare say I would almost like to see a $200,000 investment scenario as well, because I think that there's a big, knowing what our needs are, I think there's a big jump between that $100,000 and the fully funded, and would like to see an option for that, or $100,000 plus seal coat. I struggle with the seal coat, and while I don't distrust that there are benefits with that, I'm envisioning someone in Eagle Ridge hearing that Spring Creek Drive or Monroe Drive's a bad example, but Lylewood Parkway or something that's more new, Nutmeg Circle, is getting seal coated when they're, concerned about potholes and deteriorating streets. So I worry about the optics of doing that if we're not making a significant enough investment to get those kind of hot spots in our community taken care of and regularly and reliably.
Are you saying then you want to use that 280 towards these projects rather than seal coating?
I think it's more important. Yeah, I just think that the public outcry, if they hear that we're seal coating all of the new neighborhoods
Do you have an answer for that?
before we're dealing with their broken down and aging streets. Well, yeah, we can absolutely say what Aaron just told us tonight, but I don't think that that's gonna carry water.
And I guess I'd rather explain here's why, so we don't end up in this scenario. I mean, there is that to say we're doing this now, so we don't end up, dealing with unfortunately what Debbie Lane looks like now.
Yeah, I get that. I just see our needs as more a priority where the streets are wearing down.
So, remind me what you first said about you're looking for you would like to see something between aggressive and fully funded, or did I hear you
I'd like
wrong?
to see an option for
Maybe like 200,000.
aggressive that has,
More.
200,000, what 150 looks like. I'm just concerned that we're not doing
So for
enough.
me, aggressive, looking at this plan right now and what we've been talking about so far, is for me the highest I would feel comfortable going to start with. I think we can always adjust as we have new homes that are coming in and see how that looks. I don't feel comfortable going above the aggressive amount, but I can if everyone else has the idea that the aggressive is gonna work as a starting point. I can move from moderate to aggressive. I mean, I feel comfortable between those two.
I could just make that kind of point, because it's kind of funny how things kind of move for a circle, because when we were talking about this, I looked at Dan because I was kind of talking about these same scenarios, and the thing that I missed is that, each one of these options to do maps and design is we'd be paying for 4 or 5 street maintenance or pavement management plans, and so I guess I would recommend to the council, doesn't mean you have to stay with that one, but like, pick one and have them build that plan, and then if we wanna modify it.
Yeah.
But I think we'll end up paying, well, I know we'll end up paying the cost of about 5 pavement management plans to do the amount of options, and I think in the end, it might be harder for us to track which street gets done in this plan versus that plan, so, you know, if you wanted to say 100 or 150, but I think it'd be good for the engineering team to have like a number and say, okay, build a plan with that number, you know, we can kind of figure out the seal coating piece later, you don't have to decide that now, but give us the guts of this plan at this number, and if you can give us that, I think we can advance this
Yeah.
discussion.
Because if we come back and we see that, we go, ooh, not quite enough.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
go 150, right?
I prefer to look at it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And
And
it looks great.
I'd also prefer that the engineering team tells us what streets we need to do, because I don't think
Oh,
we
yeah.
have any business picking and choosing.
Okay, go aggressive.
All right, any objections to the responsible plan? I'm okay with it. Yes.
Option 3.
Option 3.
Option 3, there we go.
We'll,
But it's time.
we'll just call it the draft plan.
Perfect, love it. Okay, are you okay if we push long-term financial plan for the
Yep.
work sessions? Okay.
Perfect.
Then, and your city manager's report? All right, and then we will also push city council requests. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Again.
Motion by Councilmember Henry, a second by Councilmember Mock. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.